So no countdown,
Now
no
you are. No
music.
countdown.
All right, we're on. We are no countdown
All
today.
right.
Man, we're running
Hey.
late, so we're just on. Hey, awesome, man. How you doing?
Who? Austin?
Yeah, I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Oh, dude, I'm doing good. Little
That's
tired today, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling energized. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for to see what we're gonna get into.
all right. Me too,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
We had some yeah, we had some really interesting classes, like classes that there's no way for me to cover to say all the things I want to say and with the greatest amount of subtlety that I want to say. But I think I can
Mm.
do that here today, so that's kind of cool.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just
When you,
this, what's happening. I think right now for me is I'm
yeah.
able to really just my mind is really alive with a lot of these thoughts. So the office
Mm-hmm.
hours, this conversation with you, the office hours really give me a space to release or some of those ideas. So it's
Okay, that's
really
exciting. Yeah,
yeah.
when what do you say that you don't get to speak with the greatest amount of subtlety? What do you mean by that? Like with
Well, there's so much, like yesterday we were talking about genetics, right? And so if you can
mm-hmm.
imagine, just we have 75 minutes in class and I'm interacting with students and I'm trying to, bring it alive in some way, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
really important.
Yep.
Um, and yet I could probably, if I just sat there at the table in the front of the room, I could talk about how this matters, genetics matters to everything that we're talking about with inequality and so on. Probably,
Mm-hmm.
I could probably spend 3 hours and just go nonstop. And,
Wow.
and so there's so much subtlety, right? So you can imagine 3 hours of like really parsing it out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So, oh man, so what parts of how are you trying to bring it to life yesterday?
Well, you know, it's so the one thing that you really have to do is you have to. We started with evolution and creationism, and for me, that's where it begins. Like you really, 50%, more than 50% of the U.S. population anyway, is believes in creation. Okay, as the fundamental story, the understanding of the
Mm.
creation in the prime mover. The prime mover of how we got here is a being that is all knowing and all powerful. So
Okay.
that being was
Okay.
able to just create this universe out of
Mm-hmm.
nothing
Mm-hmm.
and including create us. And so
Uh-huh.
that's a really powerful story, right? But so what that story,
And
go ahead. Yeah.
were you gonna say like creation in all different content, like within different religions, like creating
Well,
just the
it's the
idea
same.
of creation, or
So for me, what I'm referencing is the ontology of creation, right? Just every creation,
what's ontology?
the beingness. Ontology is a study of being. So it's like every creation story has to have involves this an all-knowing, all-powerful being of some sort that can bring to life everything we see around us and everything even that we can't see out in the unknowable universe, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
um,
Wait, so you're
and then
saying every creation story has to involve that,
it involves
some
that.
all-knowing being,
Involves that. And
no
then
matter
every
what.
creation
Okay.
story has a story around that. So, like a very common one with indigenous peoples all over the world involves vegetables or other animals coming out of the ground. So, like many Native American tribes will have the story of corn, right? Somehow,
Mm-hmm.
this person, the who's the at, was there at the beginning of the world, planted an ear of corn, and the corn
Mm-hmm.
grew up, and out of the corn grew life, right? Something like that. There's always some kind of story, or it may be that they planted a fish because it's a fishing culture, but the
Right?
story always involves their particular culture. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so but when that happens, when people do that, what they also put a time stamp to it. Okay. They're almost
Uh-huh.
invariably, there's some kind of timestamp, like the universe is
Like the
X
7 days.
years old. Yeah, exactly. Like God, like in the Judeo-Christian perspective, which includes Islam, God did this in 7 days. And
Right.
for probably about half of all believers in the United States, that happened like somewhere like 4 to 8,000 years ago or whatever, right? It's a disregard of fossil evidence and all of that. Okay? So, all right. Maybe it
Really?
did.
Okay.
Right, maybe that's why I don't know, but what we have on the other side is all of this really in-depth, thought out, analyzed evidence that comes out of the earth. We
Mhm.
through like fossils and through like the study of the separation of the continents, right?
Which
Continental
isn't
drift.
creationism.
Yeah, yeah. So we have that. We have this long history that looks like it's about 10 to 12 or 14 billion years old of this process. So
Mhm.
when you got 25%, half of great more than half the United citizens just in this country who think, okay, it's creation, and half or probably more than half believe that it's only a few thousand years old, so there's no fossil evidence, right? Then that
Wow.
means, okay, it's a long step to understand genetics, and then to understand genetics and what that means for uh, the story of
Can
life and the story of inequality. Okay.
can you explain the long step? Are
Yeah,
you able
I
to
will, man. If you believe in
when you
God,
say
there's an all-powerful being. Okay.
mhm.
I love the way you're asking these questions, by the way. If you believe
Thanks,
in
same.
an all-powerful God, and you believe
Mhm.
that the earth is only like 6,000 or 8,000 whatever years old, okay? It's pretty short.
Mhm.
There's no evidence of
Right.
evolution or whatever. That none of that happened. Well, then
Mhm.
God created the inequality. And all this gross extreme inequality that we had, God created a world in which that would appear. And so
Mhm.
God
And
therefore would have wanted that because the Earth's only 8,000 years old. I mean, there's not enough time for this to develop
s
naturally, right?
so between 4,000 to 4,000 to 6 or 4,000 to 8,000 years or
Yeah.
4,000 to 6,000 years, God was a part of this creationism, and you're saying that God was also a part of this inequality? What when you say
Yeah, yeah, because
in a when you say
listen,
inequality, what are you seeing? Like, what do you
listen.
say? What do you think of for okay.
I gave the evidence of or the data of household wealth, okay, for white family, just in the United States, white families and Hispanic families and black families, Native American, Asian families, et cetera. And that household wealth is so extreme. So you got to like come up with some way to understand who, where'd this come? Why does this happen?
Right.
Why is there such vast inequality, or why is it that in the schools, in the highest, like the best science and technology schools in just New York City, entry into those high schools, okay, is based on test scores and nothing else. And students from across the city in New York City, so Elijah had to his computer shut down. So I'm just going to keep talking and imagine him answering questions. So go back to what I said the other day, but the last two classes, and that in New York City, that that set three-quarters of the students, almost three-quarters of the students who achieve the test score that's necessary to make it into these advanced, very special high schools. Three-quarters of them are of Asian ancestry. Okay. And in a Stuyvesant high school, okay, 3.5% are either black or Hispanic, meaning that all these students across the city took the same exam to get in, and they took the highest scores of people who took the exam and wanted to go to that particular school, and three-quarters of them were of Asian ancestry. 3.5% were either black or Hispanic, and the rest we assume were white. Okay. That is such an extreme level of inequality that we have to explain. So, one explanation is well, uh, people just choose that. It's just like whatever they do, they just choose to not really study hard. Black and Hispanic students, white students, Asian students really just kind of choose to do all of that studying. And the second one is, the second area of focus would be, well, there are structural factors and forces, man. People are working really hard trying to make it happen, but there are these other structural factors and forces that people don't really control. Even the Asian students who do really well, they're just being pushed by things that they don't understand. It's not even their volition. But there's a third realm of reality, and that's genetics. That the reason for these extreme inequalities has something to do with the DNA structure of the people themselves. So there's something about Asians, their DNA structure, their morphology, their admixture, right? That the way their DNA is coded, the way that Asian DNA is coded, then there's something in them that leads them to score really high on these quizzes or this exam. And there's something in Black and Hispanic and Native American people that leads them to score really low, and white people are somewhere in between, okay? So you have to entertain that as an idea. So I then, Elijah, had to go into the class to help people understand where this DNA issue fits in relation to sociology. And basically that there's nothing we can say about the DNA of these groups that we call Asian, Hispanic, Black, whatever. It's just not about that, because there's no DNA admixture that we can isolate that it will allow us to study those particular groups. Anyway, that's a long story. I don't expect you to have gotten all that, but your microphone's muted. All right, you're still muted. All right, hang on. So while you're coming back on, you figure it out, and I'm gonna keep going. So anyway, if you were watching the two classes, that's the story that really I was looking at and what I was looking at yesterday. And so that's the way to understand how this fits into the world of genetics and sociological inequality and so on. So yeah, I got distracted because now I'm actually trying to start the stream on my other computer, and it's not starting. There we go. All right, there we go. I got distracted because now I'm actually trying to start the stream on my. Okay, there we go. All right, Elijah, are you back? All right, hang on. Yeah, keep playing with it. Okay, so Jeff, can you put some questions up that I can respond to? And I will.
Yeah, you want to start with class 7 since we're talking about genetics right now?
Yeah, let's do that.
Alrighty, 1 second. Elijah, send me a message back after you've messed with the audio settings. Just give me 1 second to pull up the...
Yeah,
Here we go.
I've been really looking forward to looking at some. Okay, so what do we include when we talk about genetics? Okay, I responded to that in class.
Oh, no, I'm sharing the wrong screen.
All right, I got it.
I don't know why it's doing it this way. Okay.
All right, man. I'll wait. Anyway, I think I responded to this in class, right? And
here's the first one.
Go back to that. Okay, so why are Asians better at math? Asians are better at math. Well, first off, they're not all great at math. So if I would have asked my class to have all the East Asians, South Asians, just raise their hands. Everybody who's really not very good at math, a lot of hands would have gone up in the air. But of course, for the Chinese and Korean and Japanese, they would raise their hands saying, I'm not really good at math, but they would be far better than many or most Americans even, right? So for like what's not good for them is a much higher standard than what would be not good for the average American. But nonetheless, they're better at math because they focus on math, and they start it very early. I know kids who are in like 8 and 9 years old in Korea, and they're going to Hagwons. They're going to these cram schools and studying they're starting advanced algebra and this sort of thing. right? They're 8 and 9 years old. I mean, they're already at levels that just are beyond, and probably some calculus, right? All right. So why do Africans run faster on average? And they don't run faster on average than other races, right? But what it is, they're body types that allow for people of West African ancestry meet with a certain body type, which tends to be a little bit longer legs, short torso, etc. And a greater number of people have that body type, I should say, right? And and that happens to be a body type that helps with running. You know what I mean? So whereas I gave the example of Laotians, that's not, you're not going to see Laotians running, or Cambodians or Vietnamese running really fast. Short legs, they can't do it. But secondly, in West African culture, sprint running is huge. You go to Jamaica, go to Trinidad, go to Tobago, go to Nigeria, right? Places where the sprinter, everybody knows the champion sprinters. I mean, this is a sport that really, really matters. The average American, beyond Hussein, what is his name? Bolt. He was Usain Bolt. He became kind of a household name because he was so unique. But beyond him, the average American couldn't name a single other sprinter. So it matters that it's part of the culture. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next one. Bob the artist said, hair, skin, eye color, all due to solar radiation. Correct? No, not hair color, and not eye color. It doesn't appear at all, but skin for sure. It's really and it's just a chance that man, hang on, it's just really a chance that that melanin, which is the pigment that really protects the body from inordinate UV rays, it just turns skin brown, right? Darker, that's all. It's a darker pigmentation. And so there we go, right? So people who need that protection, they need more melanin because they need the protection from the UV rays of the sun, are just going to have darker skin on average. So now you look at, there are some very northern indigenous peoples, like the Eskimo people in northern Canada and Alaska. They also have fairly dark skin, and you think like, wow, but that's a problem because they need a lot of sun, right? Dark skin is going to protect you, but if you don't get a lot of sun, you need as much of that UV, those rays, as you can possibly get. So if I'm living like today, it's a very cloudy day here. If every single day was cloudy like this for months on end, I would need to go figure out where I can get some sunlight, and maybe it would be artificial sunlight, because this would be a problem. And I have light skin, so what little bit of sunlight is there, I'm getting as much of it as I possibly can. So it's helping with vitamin D, with calcium, with folic acid. But if I had really much more darkly pigmented skin, I really would have to go get these UV rays, get the sun rays. So that's a thing. It's a really interesting thing. That think about how often in our society we talk about skin protection for light-skinned people, right? And also darkly pigmented people can get not only sunburn and obviously suntan, but can also get skin cancer, right? But there's just greater protection. Lighter skinned people are much more at risk, and very fair skinned people are the most at risk, right? So we have all these PSAs, public service announcements, but we don't have PSAs for darkly pigmented people who are in these really not very sunny climates, making sure that you get as much UV ray as you possibly can, because that's necessary and healthy, which is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, that is so much. How come there's not PSAs like that? Are they just not, are those that are policymakers not, educated within
I think we
those?
just haven't, we've only been thinking about skin for a fairly short period of time in this kind of way. Actually, it's a good friend of mine is the one who made the skin graph, and she's kind of known as one of the world's experts on skin. And it really she published her first book. It's called Skin. God, like, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's just like we think about it, but it's just different. You know what I mean? We just don't think about it. So
What? But like in this day and age where like everything is so, like woke, or like there's such a focus
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
equity, and how come that's just not prioritized?
Well, number one,
If that's
because I don't. Yeah, yeah. The first thing is because it's not extremely dangerous, right? It's not so exceedingly problematic, right? But one can
Mhm,
expect to see like higher levels of there's kind of ailments that go along with the lacking of like sunlight among more darkly pigmented people, right? Like maybe it's
mhm,
little depression or who
mhm.
knows what. I don't know. But
Are there
anyway, it's kind of curious, right? The two things are juxtaposed. So I think because it's not such a serious issue. Yeah.
are there different PSA, like, with the let's say in areas, um like in Africa, would there be like PSAs there on certain things, or
No,
like
no,
for
no.
those, or
I,
like
I
in
I
areas where
doubt
there's
it.
darker skin?
No, no, no. I doubt it. And by the
Interesting.
way, the darkest skin that we see on average are certain spots in South Asia, certain
Got
geographic
it.
areas in South Asia.
Wow,
You
okay.
study that under the
But
arm. Yeah, that's where you get your natural skin,
really?
a meter. Yeah. So
Okay.
when you think about really that dark pigmentation, also,
Mhm.
think about South Asia. Hang on,
Wow, okay.
which is fascinating, right? It's just
Yeah, it's so
hey,
fascinating.
yeah, that's why I love this stuff. It's just so interesting, man. All right, Jeff, what do you got? Do you have
Yeah.
another question? All right, it's my guess. It's my guess. Hey, I like that. It's my guess. If having darker skin is beneficial because of and protection, why don't we don't dark because we just don't have enough time, right? B, everybody had more darkly pigmented skin at that's the original Homo sapien skin, right? It's a darker pigmentation. And so coming out of Homo sapiens coming out of Africa, you have that darker skin or uh and oh, it's me, I guess. Oh, I got it. All right. Sorry. Um,
Oh,
so so you start with a darker pigmentation and then it lightens. It lightens as people went north, right? And then and so we didn't it just lightened because it was necessary as people went north. You needed that lighter pigmentation to get as many of those UV rays as you possibly could. Then you go
mm,
really north in places like Scandinavia, right? And Sweden and Finland, Norway and Iceland, like so where you go really north, there's not a lot of sun. You better you're not going to survive. Well, you're going to eat a lot of seafood and that's going to help. I was gonna say that
mhm.
about Eskimos, right? They can have
What
dark skin because and many indigenous peoples of the North because they eat so much seafood, so that protects them.
what's a seafood benefit? Or how does
Yeah, well, you
seafood
get a
benefit
lot of
you?
vitamin D, like this for calcium and vitamin D, right?
Got it.
So you
Okay.
need that. All right, man.
Mhm.
What do we got anything else? Another question. It's my guess.
I like
Uh,
it's my guess, but it's
yeah, I
my
like
guess.
that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hey,
Mhm.
I'm not, by the way, mm, I'm not watching the chat. So if there's anything in the chat that you feel like
Mhm.
can
I'm I'm
bring
so
up.
frustrated with my computer because
I will take your
I was in
time.
sync with you, but
All
then it
right,
just
that's all right. Take my time. Hey,
there's
Jeff.
more there's more Lon says, would you say due to darker skin of Eskimos, and did you already talk about this, and other indigenous northern folks? Um, there you go. Would you say due to darker skin of Eskimos and other indigenous northern folks is due to
I don't
protection
know.
of sun rays reflecting the ice?
I maybe, but I
Reflecting
always
from the
wondered.
ice.
I remember when I first started thinking about this stuff, I always wondered, like, well, hang on a second. Do people in ice climates like that, who often are protected with just everything but their face, right? I mean, not all
Mhm,
year round, but certainly in for much of the year, right? Because you
mhm,
got to cover up as much as possible. Is it just
mhm,
their faces or upper bodies that get really have a darker pigmentation, right? And which would make sense, right? That the body would respond, but no, that doesn't seem to be it's not the case. And there's not enough time for the body. You need so many generations for our DNA, for these mutations to occur. and our DNA coding that it just like it doesn't happen like that. Human beings have only been traveling around for a short period of time, and up in these northern latitudes, I mean, really for 30,000 years or so. It's really not very much. So
And so
I don't even study DNA, by the way. So like I'm just like I just am
you're
really
just going,
fascinated by it, and I have a couple of really
right,
close friends who do, and I got
right.
into it for a while. But
Yeah, I was curious, Sam, because you were saying how like the darkest pigment is in South Asia, right? And I was like, okay, well, are in the places where there's darkest skin, would there be PSA announcements on like the importance of taking in certain
no,
and there
no,
wouldn't be, right?
I've never
But
seen
is
one.
there
I've
but
never
is there
seen one.
also are there PSA announcements there still on
No,
sunscreen?
because listen, bro,
Like to
anywhere
take
you
in sun?
see anywhere you see large populations of people with more darkly pigmented skin or lighter skin, it's the dominant there's plenty of sun or there's missing sun. It's when people travel around. So it's like when anybody where there's a darker shades of skin that they get enough sun. They don't really need there's no PSAs. You don't need anything at all, right? It's
Mhm.
only when people go to say my skin has dark pigmentation and I go to some place where there's very little sun, that's when you would want to say like, oh, wait, hang on a second, make sure you take care of yourself, right? And some people
Right.
do this, some people know this, like they're
So
aware of it, but it's a very small issue actually.
would you
Yeah.
okay, so I was just curious because it made me make the connection. I just wanted to ask a question before this question is, do people stress sunscreen in those areas
Yeah,
still?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Everybody does
okay,
increasingly.
everyone
Yeah.
does. Okay,
Yeah.
because I was just wondering, like, how many trends around the world are supported or influenced by the Western world, like in terms of like sunscreen or like
Uh,
certain announcements or like
I
things that are
maybe
versus that's
Probably,
the
yeah.
connection I was
Probably
making.
not the Western world, but Western science, okay? And the
Got
Western
it.
science starts to I think about the indigenous peoples, where I lived in Ecuador, right? And I think about the small farmers where I was living. And, they're not reading newspapers, like they're not reading stuff, right? But I can imagine that eventually sunscreen would start to make its way into their small stores out in these sort of rural areas because it just would, right? And it would take a long time for people to start to say, like, well, hang on a second, right? And it's just because you're just separated from what you and I would consider to be like the modern so-called conveniences of a capitalist culture, right? We go to the grocery store and there's aisles and aisles and aisles of stuff, and they just wouldn't have
Right.
that. Yeah. Hey,
Right.
by the way, that
Yeah.
there's a question. Um, hang on, I saw it. Shoot, that I wanted to answer. Darn it. About West India. Oh, it's Josiah Christensen. Jeff, can you put that up about why do West Indians and Europeans have similar features, right? So West Indians. So let's think about what West India is. West India is a region of the world that was composed, first off, of the indigenous peoples who came over, 15 to 20,000 years ago, came across the Bering Strait down into the Americas. Hey, I could do this right on my map back here. Oh my
Go.
God.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right across the Bering Strait and then
Uh-huh.
down into the Americas. So like in yesterday's class, I showed this photo of a Chinese woman and a Navajo woman. And in
Mhm.
the Chinese guy, nobody could tell them apart, not even the Chinese volunteer, right? Because they're the same. They have the same DNA. It's the same. Okay. So now think about go to West India. So West India is what we talk about the Caribbean basin. Okay. So you've
Mhm.
got the indigenous peoples, because some people, they made it onto boats, and the Taino people, in
The
what
what
is now
people?
Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and Haiti and so on.
Mhm.
So they're the indigenous peoples. Then you have the Europeans who show up, right? When Columbus shows up. So these are these,
Mhm.
most Southern Europeans. They're not Northern Europeans. They're Southern. They're Spain and Portugal and Italy, kind of, right? But Spain and Portugal primarily. Okay.
Mhm.
With probably having some North African sailors on the ship. I don't know this, but I would imagine probably some North African sailors too. Okay. Who are the Berbers, right? Who are mostly white.
What are
Mostly look
Berbers?
like
Okay,
you.
I was gonna ask.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, the Berbers.
Okay.
The Berbers is just the name of a general tribe of people, who just are all in North Africa and kind of travel back and forth between Europe and North Africa. Jeff,
Hey,
Are they
what
buddy.
like mix? What?
I actually have to run, so you're on your own for a little bit. I have to go pick them up from the dentist again.
All right, man. All right, we're on, dog. We're on.
Uh,
We'll take questions from the stream. So listen. So now, so the West Indians, right? So the Europeans come.
mhm,
So you got
mhm,
the indigenous peoples, right? Who
mhm.
were the groups of people that sort of came out of the original people crossing the Bering
They're
Strait.
indigenous West Indians, or is that like,
No, no, no. Now, well,
or
no,
who?
because you think, listen,
What were
man,
they
you cross
called?
over in
Yeah.
what is now Alaska, okay?
Uh-huh.
What is in that strait right there, and you start coming down the coast, and it's really cold in what is now Canada, and you keep coming down into what would be the United States, and these populations of Asians, right? People who came from the Asian continent just slowly start to spread across the entire continent, and then they keep going south down into Mexico, through central, what is now Mexico and Central America, and into South America, and they populate the entire region. And at some point, some people, probably from the Yucatan Peninsula or maybe Florida, get on boats and they travel out into these islands, which is Hispaniola, Haiti, Dominican Republic, or Puerto Rico, or Trinidad, or Tobago, or wherever, right? And so they eventually just populate. Then they're living there for a long time in isolation. So the Taino people are not the same as the indigenous peoples in central Mexico, because they've now separated and developed new cultures. Does that make sense? You got
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah, but who are yes, but who are the time? So that's why you're saying the
Taino people are
Navajo,
just the name of the tribe who lived in Puerto Rico and parts of other
but
parts of Hispaniola.
who are part of an origin that immigrated from Asia all the way
Exactly.
down through
Yeah.
Alaska, then down through like what's known as
Well,
Canada, and then
maybe.
down.
No, probably. Yeah, that's right. Down through Alaska, down through Canada, down through the Americas, etc. Yep. Yep.
And then
Exactly.
that's how, wow, and so that's why they wouldn't be able to, like, a student wasn't able to tell the difference between a Navajo and a Chinese
Yeah.
student.
Yeah.
Is that what you
No.
said?
So I had a photo of a Navajo woman and a woman from China, right? Central China. She's Han Chinese, which is the dominant ethnic group in China. It's like 70% of all
Right.
Chinese are Han Chinese.
Okay.
You can't tell them
Okay.
apart because they share the same DNA. Because in 15,000 years in which they separated, that's not enough time for DNA to be, our coding to be changing. There are going to be a few what we call uh, g- uh, genetic mutations along the way, but not very many. Okay, a mutation is when the
Right.
cell just for some reason transforms and then something happens. So maybe you have a
Right.
genetic mutation and I have a little hitch in my ear. And everybody in my
Right.
family has the same little hitch in their ear. And if I go back
Uh-huh.
to my uncles and my grandfather, they have the same hitch in their ear. And at some point in time,
Really?
it
Is that
started.
true?
No, I'm just using this as an
Okay.
example. But at some point in
Right.
time,
Right.
it started as a mutation that there's this little divot in the ear, It's like, oh, whoa,
Uh-huh.
hang on. And then it just keeps going because that gene, that marker just keeps getting passed along, right? Okay, so now I'm still going
And
back to the
but
question, right? All
got
right.
it. But that serves no purpose, right? That
No,
genetic
something
mutation.
like that serves no
Besides,
purpose. It doesn't really matter. It's just a
got
mutation that
it.
happens, right? Okay,
Got it.
so
What
so
I
now
was
you got the Europeans who are in the Americas, but then the Europeans start bringing Africans, sub-Saharan Africans over, which were not
mhm.
Africans. They were West Africans, right? West Central Africans for the most part. The vast majority of slaves are from West Central Africa, not the very
And
South.
what's the distinction of that? Like, what's the
Well, it's
distinction
because
between,
if
like,
you look
what
at a
distinction
map
are you
of the
making?
slave trade, you think about slavers. Slavers have to go into Africa. They have to land on the shore and they have to go find Africans who they can get, put on their boats and travel across the oceans. Well, where are you going to get them? You're not going to travel very far into Africa because you can't do that. I mean, Africa is Africa. Like you can't go 1,000 miles in. You're on foot. You're on horseback. There's no way
Uh,
you can do that. So when you look at a
wow.
map of slavery, It's just a very here. I'm gonna go point to it. Right. I'm gonna do my
Yeah, let's go, please.
It's right here, right there. Okay.
That's
Right.
sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan.
Yeah, it's one
Sub-Sahara.
tiny. And then on the east side of Africa, also slave ships went. But okay, so now,
But it was always on the edge.
yeah, it's on the
Usually.
edge
It was right on the edge.
because this is 500, 3, 4, 500 years ago. You get 3, 4, and you can't go very far into Africa, man, because you're gonna die. You're gonna get diseases. You're gonna die. You can't. And then let's say you so-called capture people. You got to bring those people out. Like, how many far can you travel with people on foot and
Right.
somehow make it? Like, you can't. And then
Right.
you're gonna
Right.
travel into Africa. If you think about this slave trade, it's crazy.
Mhm.
You're
Mhm.
gonna travel in there with chains and really heavy gear and weaponry because you better have a lot of weaponry, right? And that's
Right.
heavy, and you got to bring that across. Like, you can't go very far. So then you get
Yeah.
Africans to help, right? You get other tribes, other people to help, because just like the Germans were,
How do you get them to help?
well, you pay them off somehow, right? Or you force them to help. And just like in World War II, people made allies with the Nazis because, like, you're gonna make allies with evil because you will,
Like,
because you'll do it to survive, right? So
right. Like, in order for us not to be slaves, we'll form alliances. So
exactly.
then,
Well, exactly. So people have this idea that, well, Africans were part of the slave trade. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, some tribes were. Of course they were. It wouldn't have happened. But that doesn't take away any responsibility from the Europeans, right? Okay, so
right. Right.
just like the fact that
Wow.
like there were people in the Vichy government that supported Hitler, right? That doesn't make
Uh-huh.
them right. It doesn't make Germans more right because we have these French
Uh-huh.
people helping us, right? Okay,
Uh-huh.
so
They were just
now
afraid
you
of
got
Hitler.
now you got West India, right? I don't even remember what the
Uh-huh.
question was, by the way. So if you could go back up there and
Just
look at it. Wait, if whoever wrote
was
the
it by who was it by?
I
Do
forget,
you
but
remember?
put it back in the chat if you could. Okay, so now you have
Yes.
West Indians. West Indians
Uh-huh.
are indigenous people, the Indians, right? Well, we call it Indians because,
Mhm.
Columbus, they had the idea they landed in India, so we call it Indians. And then we say uh, the Europeans and the Africans, okay? So the question was, what's the difference? Oh, man.
Oh,
Hang
maybe I
on,
can.
Josiah. It's Josiah. Yeah. Why do West Indians and Europeans have similar features? So listen, well, they don't have necessarily. They have similar features. Because, um, hang on, West Indians, right? So let's now think about what is most of West India. You have these three different peoples with different historical ancestries coming together. So different
Mhm.
bodily features. Okay. Hey, Elijah,
Mhm.
look for another question that I'm going to answer as soon as I'm done with this one. Okay.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Mhm.
so you have people with similar bodily features that are, for some people, extremely different. Like, so for example, some Africans who were brought to the Americas had the Africans have very different features because they were from different parts of Africa. And so some were short, some were tall, some had a wider nose, some a thinner nose, some had just all sorts of differences, right? Just like Europeans have differences. If you travel through Europe, some people have a wide nose, some have a thick nose, some have a long nose, some have a short nose, some are taller, some are shorter. It's the same thing. So now you have all these West Indians, okay? And then you
Mhm.
have the Europeans, right? Like, okay, well, of course, some people are going to look the same, but not a whole lot. Yeah.
And
All right.
I'm not sure if you already asked Eric Sells, but he says regardless this is back when you're talking about creationism versus evolution. So do you want to go back that far? I can look
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. He said regardless the alleged number of so-called Christians in the US, how many truly believe in creationism rather than evolution? Not so many. And then he makes a comment and he says, Doc, you're not describing genetics, you're describing socialization and culture. So let's address this accurately.
Oh, wait. Whoa, hang on a second. Right. Hang on. My numbers on uh, my numbers on American. Okay, so about Okay, this Gallup poll, about 40%. It's most recent Gallup poll. 40% of Americans believe in creationism. Okay. All right. So I'm off by a little bit. All right. Now, yeah, I can't really respond. I would have to, Eric, you'd have to say more about the genetics piece because I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, I have another question. What time period do we estimate it takes for evolution or environmental effects or environmental effects genetic sorry the
Yeah.
what time period do we estimate it takes for evolution or environmental to affect genetic connections?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
the question.
Well, I
Does that
don't
make
know.
sense?
I'd have to. I think that's would be a really interesting question for a geneticist, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly we're seeing people making very fast moves, like artificially changing the genetic coding of life forms, whether it's plants or mice or something, and it happens very quickly. And very quickly. I mean, it's just, obviously one generation because it's an intervention. But in
Right.
terms of other kinds of interventions, it depends on like kind of what it is, right? I'm sure the story is that, fish, started, I mean, reptiles and mammals and so on. I mean, we all emerged out of the ocean, right? Out of the water. So at some point in time, something had to happen for that to occur. And I'm sure that took a very, very long time, millions of
Right.
years, for it to happen
Here's
very
a
slowly. Yeah.
Here's a question. Sam, do you have gills? That's a joke. I'm just
All
kidding.
right.
Um, but here's one that I think you might be interested in. One says, do you think if the U.S. instituted a system like South Korea, we could drive up learning across the board?
Mm, probably
Which,
not.
if you could provide context
Yeah,
for
I'll
that
provide
too, because
context on that.
I'm not
Yeah.
really sure of the system
Yeah.
that South Korea has.
Well, South Korea, and same with these nations, right? Singapore, Japan, uh, China to a degree. China's just very different because it's so big, but South Korea is small. It's 51, 52 million people, right? It is a education system in which people have invested an extraordinary amount of money in that education system and invested an extraordinary amount of energy in education itself. So first off,
What are they?
in a Confucian world, so Korea, the ideology into which Korea is most deeply embedded is a Confucian ideology, and
Mhm.
teaching and the relationship between the student and then the teacher and learning is at the core of that, fundamental, right?
So the hierarchy is
Really big.
essential,
Yeah. And so
huge.
you have
You
an immense deference toward your teachers. So teachers
Mhm.
for it's changing now. I mean, Koreans talk about it changing now, but it's not changing as fast as they like to they sometimes say that it is. But there's such deference to teachers. Like to say you're a teacher is a really important thing there. Here, think about how you
Uh,
like where the first thing you say to a teacher is like, "Oh, that's too bad. Oh, the students must be terrible and the pay is awful and like you don't get any
right.
respect." And we just go right there. But that has
Like
not been true.
you don't get paper balls thrown at you.
No, no, no. And there
Like
has been okay, so it is again, things are changing in different ways, slowly, but still, education is really, really important. And
Mhm.
it's an entire society that believes this. Okay. There are very few people who just think like, okay, this isn't important. You may think that because your child can't go to college or whatever, but you're still going to say, but it's is really valuable and it's important that we educate ourselves. I have had
Right.
conversations with taxi drivers who never went to college and who are never going to go to college and were by all accounts
In South
uneducated, right?
Korea?
In South Korea, but who nonetheless talk about the importance of education and it's so valuable, it's so extremely important that all of our children and that's the second thing, that there's a sense of national identity in Korea. that all of our children, the taxi driver doesn't say, my grandchild, and my grandchild has to want him to study hard so he can get a good job and make money. It's like, no, our children have to be educated so we can continue to build our country. You don't have that in the
Mm,
West. You do in some places, like smaller European nations, right? And there's some other nations, but definitely not in the US, not at all
right.
in the US. So that's part of the Korea piece. So what I would say in answer to that question, and you can get my next question ready, by the way.
And I'm also, well, I have a follow-up too into
Okay, all
like,
right. So my
mhm,
long-term answer to that question is we probably won't convince Americans that to study as hard as on average Koreans are willing to study. You were just not going to
mhm,
do that. And Japanese and
mhm,
many Chinese, right? And
right.
that's the first thing. Second, we don't have that sense of national identity or national pride that would lead people to really be driven to do that. Like, I'm
Mhm,
getting educated on behalf of my country and on behalf of all these people around me to whom I am connected. Maybe not consciously, and maybe you don't say it, but you feel it. And that's a feeling in Korea that is so absolutely fascinating. I've never felt it
wow.
anywhere other than Japan, to be honest with you.
Wow, in terms of the national identity, like their
Just that
nationalistic
sense. Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, like,
Wow, the
I don't
pride.
teach. Look, I teach because I really wanna uplift young people, and I wanna support anybody, not just young people, but whoever wants to listen. It doesn't matter. Like, I wanna exchange ideas, and I wanna benefit people because I feel like if people can think more on their own terms, and that's a good thing, right? I never think, well, because it's really good for my nation. It's like this is
Mm,
important for us to continue to be a great nation or grow or whatever. I would never say
mhm,
that. Not that it's not true or something. I just wouldn't say it. It would never be in my mind. And I don't think you're going to find a teacher anywhere in any public school anywhere in the United States who would just that would be in the front of their mind. Like it's just not there.
yeah,
But in
yeah.
Korea, it would be like, I gotta stick out, we're building, So anyway, that's
Wow. That's so interesting. Like it brings me to a question of like what's missing in the West or like what is present in Korea for that national pride to exist? Like
yeah,
what's
yeah,
there for that connection to be
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
strong between between their country and the individual?
Well,
Um,
Korea, that
but
dude, what you just asked right there is the question that would take a long time to answer, so I'm not gonna answer it,
got
but I
it.
would say that
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Well,
no. But I'll just say it very quickly. Korea
uh-huh.
just has had a very, very unique history that's never happened anywhere in the industrial world. Yeah, never. Korea, the past 60 years of Korea have been something. It's called the miracle on the Han River. The Han River is the river that cuts through Seoul, and it's referenced all the time as the miracle on the Han River because it is a miracle. That what Korea has been able to do to go from in the early 60s, one of the poorest nations in the world, to one of the wealthiest top 10 nations, right, in terms of GDP in the world. Nobody's ever that's just not. Nobody's ever
Wow.
come close to that. It's a unique
Wow.
experience for Korea. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Um, and then I also had a question like that was regarding education. Do you like because you said Korea puts so much money into the education system? Are
Yeah.
there do you are you aware of like the differences of how that money is used in like the education system in Korea versus the West? Like are teachers
Well,
paid more?
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like in terms of those
Huh.
uh
Well, a little bit. Um, I mean, I am a professor at a university in Korea. I could tell you that I don't get paid that much, but I don't get paid. I don't have a salary there, so it's very different. But
right.
uh,
Oh, you're a professor in Korea? Abroad
yeah,
Korea?
yeah, yeah. At Konkuk
Oh
University.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
I
cool. I
am
didn't
I
know
have
that.
the title of distinguished professor. It's a real honor. It's been really has been the greatest honor of my life to be
Wow.
to be a to be given the title of distinguished professor at Konkuk, and it's a
How would
very
you be addressed? Oh, sorry, go ahead, continue.
professor. Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
I can tell people.
Professor.
I can tell, especially Korean students. I can tell, hey, you can call me Sam. They just won't call. A very few will call me Sam. You know, but
Right, wow.
yeah, I
That's
call everybody
interesting.
professor there too because it's fun.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but it's
But
yeah, it's a great university with a great story, and I'm
mhm.
personal friends with the chairwoman and the president.
Well, like back to that question, like, are you like, do you, in terms of like how they spend their money, like,
Yeah.
or like, are teachers paid more in Korea, or is like
Yeah.
university more?
I don't think I don't think it's really about that. I think it's just
Uh-huh.
more, and even spending money, it's more a cultural piece, man. I can't put
Got
this,
it.
I
Okay.
can't explain it
Right.
enough
Right.
to say it's like this. Imagine that you've got a culture in which you've convinced the vast majority of parents, the vast majority of students, starting when they're like 6 and 7 years old, that it is valuable to spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day studying. Like, it is good for you,
Right.
and it's good for
That's
everyone around you, right? You've got a
Yep.
culture that has been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, you can't pay for it. You can't buy that. That's just something that's just beyond anything
Right.
you could imagine, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And well, like, isn't there also an insane amount? I don't know. Actually, I don't know. But you hear, at least I've heard in Asia, like specifically China, and then I'm not so sure in Korea, but like the suicide rates that are associated with
Yeah, they have
like
very high,
education.
yeah.
Is
Yeah,
that
Korea
is
and
that
Japan
s-
and yeah. Yeah, well, there's a certain kind of pressure, right? But that's also
right?
complicated. It's not just the pressure from studying. But that's one of the big pressures. But listen, when we say a high suicide rate, well, the
Right.
suicide rate's really high. Well, it still is, relatively speaking, not. That has to be relative, right? Any suicide rate is not that high. The number of people who take their own lives out of 100,000, it's really never going to be very high. One that, look at Beaver Stadium, right? Think about your mind's eye
Mm-hmm.
looking down at Beaver Stadium, and in a
Mm-hmm.
year's time, 8 of those people take their own lives, right? That's really not
Oh,
that many people when it's 100,000 people. I mean, it's 8
right.
lives, but, you have to look at it in a certain context. So,
Got
anyway,
it.
what else
Okay.
do you have, man? Do you have
No.
any other question?
Yeah. So one by TNT Simulate, it says if people were separated into continents or lands based off of skin color, do you believe it would end racism?
Uh, it maybe, I don't know. There's kinda like, maybe look, here's the problem. When people live in cultures that are very d that are, you know, b b when people live in cultures that are extremely different from other cultures, okay? Meaning like language or the food you eat or whatever, right? Look, here, I'm actually gonna take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is my own life, okay? That's my biggest concern in the world, is my own life. Yours is your own life. You wanna be safe, you wanna find nourishment, you wanna find a place to sleep, you wanna find protection, right? You need you wanna stay healthy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's built into your DNA, all right?
Right.
Well, that's gonna be true. That's true of every human being anywhere, okay? That
Mm-hmm.
it's fundamentally about them. Now, who has your best interests in mind? The people who are most closest to you, the people who you are gonna look out for, they want to look out for you because you're important for them and they're important for you. And who are you most going to look out for? People in your immediate bloodline, right? The closer they are to you, the more you're going to look out for them. And then you start
Right.
going out, your extended family, and then your community, and then your friends. And sometimes it's not your family at all because you leave your family behind and it's just your community. But the point is, it's people in your immediate surroundings and they're like you. They they talk like you, they walk like you, they believe fundamentally in similar things that you believe in. They
Mm-hmm.
everything. So you're all part of a culture. Now you bring somebody else in from the outside who's from a very different culture. They speak a different language, they have different customs, they have different ways of living. You can't believe that they're really going to look out for your interests, because, like, how can you believe that? They're not from my culture. How do I trust that they're going to look out for me? So it's natural that you're going to have a distrust in people who are different, because remember, my DNA, it's built into me to look out for me. I got to protect
Right.
this thing and keep it living. And
Right.
so I want people who are just like me first. That's my greatest likelihood that I'm going to be able to sustain myself. So now when you
Mm,
get people from outside and these cultures coming together, there are differences and people have distrust, and then things start to fall apart. And so
mm,
maybe if we'd have to get everyone to be, it's not just the same skin colors. You want to get people, I don't know what you have to do, but this is the
yeah.
essential problem of cultures coming together.
Huh. It it brought me to a question about trust.
Uh-huh.
I was just curious, like, I don't know, this is just random, but what role do you think that like a citizen or just an individual versus like maybe local government or like national government has in building trust for communities? Like
Yeah,
helping like support a structure to build trust
yeah.
for communities.
Yeah. Oh man, that is such a great question. Uh, the reason
Yeah,
I like your
appreciate that,
question
Sam.
is because they open a doorway for me to say something sociologically, right? They always open a doorway. So I'm gonna answer your question by actually answering the sociological part of your question.
Please.
It's
Okay.
not a direct answer.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that, by the way.
So the issue is think about trust, right? What role does the individual have? In many ways, the individual doesn't have any role at all because trust is something that emerges out of a group of people. The greater trust happens when people have each other's interest in mind and each
Mm,
person really believes that. So I believe that these people in my neighborhood want the same things I want. I believe that if I run into an issue, they'll look out after me. And I believe
right.
that because I'll look out after them and they know that. And so, wow, if they know
Mhm.
that, then I also can trust that they'll react in the same way because it's reciprocity. It's a sense. We're all the same here. We're part of it, right? So
Mm,
it's not about an individual because it's really about how strong is the community trust. And of course, this is some of the stuff that's happening, all over the world, right? When community trust breaks down, like when these uh, when people migrants enter into Europe or migrants enter into the United States, it's like, okay,
right.
you're not like us. Are you going to come on board and be like us, and then we can trust that you'll work together with us, or are you not going to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, where does oh man, I'm just like, where does the lending of a hand start? Like, does that like start with the person that's coming in, or like from the person that's already in the community? Like,
Is the
how
big
does
argument. This is the argument about assimilation, right? So people who are
right?
migrants will often say, or people of minority status in a majority world will often say, hey, it's your job to reach out to me, right?
Mm,
Because I'm the newcomer here. And like you have to make me feel welcome. If you make me feel welcome, then I will join and I'll be part of your world, right?
yeah,
And that's what the newcomer says. But the person who's there says, well, I'm only going to make you feel welcome if I think that my welcome is going to be reciprocated, that you're going to respond to it. You have to make me want to welcome you. You have to show me that you want to be part of my community, that have, do you believe that my life and my world and my community here where you are now, that has value. And so if
right.
you can show me that you believe it has value, like, hey, I'm moving into your home, okay?
Yeah,
But I know I'm moving into your home and I know I'm different. And I know I have a different religion and a different foods and different way of dressing and all this kind of stuff. I'm moving into your home, but no, I want to be part of your home. It's like, okay,
yeah,
all right. Now I'm like, I hear you say that, but now I gotta see it. And so this is why people get so freaked out when immigrants come in and to a community and there's enough of them and they start putting up flags in like restaurants and stores with their own language, right? And people go like, whoa, 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 hang on a second, right? So those
yeah,
of us who are really into multiculturalism, we're thinking like, oh, this is pretty cool, right? Because I'm into multiculturalism, so that means that I can put my trust out into large groups of people. Like I have friends all over the world. If I needed something, I could call them on the phone and I could say, listen, can you come from the Middle East? Or can you come from South America? Or will you come from India or Asia and help me? I need your help. And they would come. These are my
Right.
friends, right? I talked to
Right.
2 of them this morning for a long period of time, right? So like, okay, got it. But that's the problem with immigration, man. That's what we're battling over. So one side
Yeah.
says you have to reach out, and the other side says, no, you have to reach out. And then we get stuck.
Right. And I'm wondering, what are those like contractual, like implicit or like
Yeah.
explicit contractual agreements that also don't take away from like the person that's entering is like, oh, like for those that aren't interested in
Yeah.
or are fearful of like
Yeah.
multicultural
Yeah.
ecosystems. And
Yeah.
then what I'm just wondering, if I don't know if you have a sense of like what those who are just in their ecosystem already, like what kind of actions or behaviors or social agreements are they looking for
Yeah.
outside of like them feeling like those that are
Listen,
incoming need to
yeah.
sacrifice their culture,
Yeah. Here's
you know?
the answer to your question. Many people are just looking for different things, right? Yeah, people just look for different things, but mostly people are looking for signals, right? And the signals are that, hey, you signal to me that you wanna that you're not going to disrupt my life too much. Okay. That's the most
Mhm.
important thing. And that's fair. You cannot look at anybody who, the people that are really struggling with large numbers of immigrants in their communities, okay? Like the Springfield,
Mhm.
Ohio, and the Haitian immigrants.
Mhm.
You If someone is saying, look, none of us want our lives disrupted, whether it's a hurricane or a forest fire or a flood or a drought. Nobody wants that. And so like, well, how about if it's a huge number of immigrants that are coming in? It's like, oh
Right.
shit. What do I got to do now? Like, what do I got how is this going to impact my life? It's the same as, the metaphor. See, unfortunately, some people who are kind of hateful or mean are using a lot of really negative, hateful language, but the language works, right? What's this flood coming at me? What's this thing, whatever it is coming at me, right? This hurricane. The hurricane happens to be 20,000 people coming into my pretty small community. Like, holy shit, right? So
Wow.
that,
Right.
of course,
Is
anybody's could get wigged out. Like, really, that's like, how is this going to affect me? So if I said to you, hey, listen, man, Lori and I are going to come move into your apartment for the next month because our house just burned down and we're going to move into your apartment. So like, just whatever you
yeah, bet.
deal with it, right?
Right.
Be
Right.
your life is going to be disrupted, or maybe it's just not your apartment, but we're going to put a tent in your yard and we're just going to come in and use your bathroom 3 or 4 times a day. Maybe
Yeah.
it's not we're going to be living in your living room, but we're just going to come in and we're going to disrupt it a small amount. You would
Yeah.
say, like, I don't know if I want that. Well, that's what a lot of these people are saying in the United States about immigration
Right.
coming in. So
Mhm.
the left sees them as, oh, you're these Trump people and you're a racist and your stuff. It's like, no, they're actually just, I talked to a lot of people when I was down on the border who were living on the border, and they're going like, this is actually a problem in this, and this way. And in these
Right.
other ways that people are talking about it, like Donald Trump and a lot of other people,
Mhm.
these ways that Trump is talking about, yeah, it actually is a problem. So, you got to listen to that guy. But these other
Right.
ways, yeah, it's not so much a problem that way. But, but these
Right.
are real. And so you got a lot of people on the left who are, these liberal left people who want to be, supportive and want to be kind and want to be so on. Well, you got to accept that this is real. It's real all over the world when migration happens.
Right. And the answer to the original question that you said earlier was the individual doesn't have a role, right? Or you said they do have a
Well,
role.
they do,
And I
but
was
in
they
the
do,
end,
but
I'm a
it's
sociologist. So in the end, I'm
right.
not really that interested in the individual role. I'm interested in how the collectivity is responding. What makes
Right.
what makes the community of Springfield, Ohio, which is a pretty small city, what allowed them to house, to bring, 19 or so 20,000 Haitian, mostly Haitian, not all Haitian, but mostly Haitian migrants into their community and
Right.
not have a major uproar. Like, what
Right.
allowed that to happen? Because that's pretty
Mm.
amazing that could happen. And I think personally,
So,
I think it says something about just human generosity all over the world. Most people have been pretty welcoming of immigrants, historically
mm,
speaking, including Native
mm,
American peoples being welcoming of the European immigrants. Most
mm,
people are pretty welcoming, including most
mm,
Americans. And there's a certain generosity, and even some of these people who speak the most loudly and are like, send the immigrants back home, and that whole thing, and they're out chanting. If a Mexican family showed up at their door at their picnic that they were having and said, like, hey, can we join your picnic? The Mexican family, they just moved in, and they're refugees, they live in an apartment down the street, and they showed up. Most of those people would say, yeah, okay, come on in, let's go. Where are you from?
man,
Mexico. Oh, you're one of
yeah.
those families down the street. Yesterday they were standing on a street corner, burning, screaming and hollering, and the next day they're like, okay, because that's how human beings are.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
how.
Yeah, that's cool because like when you were saying like not really a role and like thinking bigger picture, it made me think about okay, if it's like not a role, because maybe role kind of starts to imply choice in a
Yeah,
way, like maybe
right,
it
exactly.
like
Yeah, that's a good
it's
idea.
more about like shifting, like how do groups in a community just shift, like
Yeah,
adapt to
yeah,
nature that's happening, the part
yeah,
of nature in the world is that like war happens,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then with
yeah,
that,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's,
that's right.
and then it like brings the question, what leads a community to be more so like generous versus like maybe communities that are less, and one of those factors you're saying is like
Listen,
you just need to see and experience
yeah,
that
you see and experience it, but
family not.
I'm going to make this statement. I'm going to go off on a limb. And by the way, Eric just said that the population of Springfield, Ohio was 58,000, 58.6 thousand in 2023, man. So now add 20,000
Wow.
people to that. 20,000 Haitians, man. Listen, I spent a lot of
That's
time
the
in
most
Haiti.
high.
And so, like, I've been in Haiti where I didn't see, there are just only Haitians, man.
Right.
There are no blancs. There are no people who look like me at all. There are days at a
Right.
time, right? And and like I I 20,000 people who, I'm like, I just picked 20,000 people out around me. I'm in Haiti and I say, okay, you 20,000 come with me. We're all going to Springfield, Ohio. And like, I would know, like, oh my God, y'all get ready. This is big. This is so big. And the fact that
Wow.
human beings there was no uprising says something about human just the human capacity to be empathic and to be good. And I think humans are mostly good. And you see that.
Right.
And I don't care if you're
Yeah.
extreme Republican or extreme Democrat or whatever. The vast majority of us are mostly good most of the time, and we will
Wow.
treat other people with respect. Now, if we get whipped up into a frenzy of war, and then
Uh-huh.
and we grab our soldiers, then we go over and you're going to have to start killing people because that's what happens. But that's not in the psyche. That's not in the
Right.
human psyche, which is why you have to train soldiers to kill because people won't kill naturally. Like we know that you have
Right.
to train, 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 so that when the moment comes, people do what they have to do to take the life of another person. And
Wow.
that's not part of it. So when you study, like, World War I, the number of people who just refused to shoot, they refused to kill, or they shot over people's heads. Civil War, every war, it's not in one's psyche to easily do that. So after World War I, in training for World War II, they started using like human um, like cutouts and stuff, right? And things
Mhm.
that simulated other human beings, so that it was easier for people to just see that human over there and aim my gun at them and pull the trigger, because it's very difficult to do that, right?
Wow. And that was where? That was when was that happening?
Here in the West, but also in Europe in World
Wow.
War II. Like, it was really a thing that came out of that, you know?
Wow.
That's
Wow. And
that's why we do training, man.
is
Yeah.
that is that an idea? Or like, because I was wondering, like, because you were saying people are mostly good, and then I started thinking about like organizations that are like we were talking, I think it was where were we talking about the Proud, oh, in the Source 269 dialogue, they started talking about the Proud Boys and
Yeah,
like you know, how certain ideologies could be so strong that you're like able to dehumanize. And but I
yeah.
was wondering, like, dang, how attached to an idea do you have to be for the natural good that
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
speaking to? Like, is really just starts, because it's, you have to be like, how attached do you have to be to an idea in order for like a family of like coming that needs help knocking on your door, like you're saying, preparing for a picnic, and like how could
Yeah,
you
yeah,
not
yeah.
invite them in? And so I'm just,
Well, here's the
that's what
thing,
I'm
though.
mostly.
Those really hardcore ideas, this is my own personal, this is what I've seen. I'll say this is my 64
Yeah,
years of traveling around the world, engaging from, at the highest level to at whatever level, right?
right,
It still doesn't take, once you take an extremist ideology, like, you have to
mhm,
surround yourself with other people with that same
right,
extremist ideology that
uh-huh,
dehumanizes other people in groups. Or you have to
right,
be mentally ill, just, you can be by yourself and be mentally ill, right? But you have to
right,
surround
mhm,
yourself, and you have to really keep stoking that. You have to be putting fuel on it constantly. And that's what those other people do. They surround you and they put fuel on it, right? And so that
mm,
allows us to sort of sustain that. But the slightest crack in that ideology is enough to just make it like, whoa, hang on. It's like
wow.
it's off of us, right? By
And
the way,
that's your
Bob the artist said it's why we have PTSD. Yeah, exactly. PTSD is like the stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, the stress of going to war and killing another human being, man, taking the life, or seeing their home destroyed, or seeing their car destroyed, or just seeing the destruction. Like, my God, that is traumatizing. So
right,
anyway, it doesn't take a lot
wow,
to break through that ideology of people, right? Okay,
wow, that's
Sam
so,
saw Robert Sapolsky's idea of having no free will. Oh man, you know what? I don't. I'm gonna have to write that down. I don't know that idea. I don't know Robert Sapolsky. Uh,
well, me neither, Sam.
uh, I'm gonna do this. Yeah, I'm gonna put it up. Oh, that guy. Oh, I know that guy with the beard, man. Oh yeah. Oh, I know this guy. All right.
Could Jeff like share a picture of him or something, or share,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Jeff, share a picture of this guy. He's a great shot, man. He's like the Neanderthal man. Yeah, the one that I'm looking at. Yeah, very cool dude. Really, I think also I'm gonna listen. The answer to the question is,
Uh-huh.
Lucas. I don't. Yeah, there. Look at
Oh
that guy.
wow,
Cool or what,
okay.
man?
Yeah, man,
Yeah, I'm gonna
that's
explore him
cool.
a little bit. I can't say that. I can imagine the kinds of things that he says, but uh, I think we could argue that there's no free will even. I can argue that. I can make that statement that we're just living, man. We're living. And yeah, I sometimes feel like I spent my whole day today. I didn't feel like I made a single choice in anything that I did. I was just in the zone of doing what I had to do. I was writing a talk for Korea. I'm going to Korea in a few weeks. And
Okay.
and I have this talk that I'm giving on AI that is such a, it's such a mountainous, it's like a high mountain thing that I'm like climbing to see over the ledge and see what it is that I'm gonna say. But I said it today. I've been working up to it. I've been putting all the pieces in place to come up with my vision for what I was gonna say. And
For your
so I did.
presentation?
Yeah, the presentation, yeah. And it's just a
Okay.
slideshow with 10 slides that has like, a one single sentence or a few words,
Right.
but I
Uh-huh.
had to put my ideas together, and I did. And so the point being, all day today, just been in this zone of like really one thing after another that I felt like it was never even choosing. I was just being pulled along throughout the day by these invisible hands that just kept holding me in place and keeping me in the spot where my mind was just sort of operating very smoothly and agilely. So there's no free will.
Wow.
There was no free will.
Yeah.
Did I even choose anything? Even when I went
Is
and
that
got lemonade, it wasn't even free will. It just happened. I think
do you
that's what
think there's
Tolkien says. Yeah.
Oh wow. It makes you like, do you think there's like a distinction between like some things that even like let's say there was no free will, right? And
Yeah.
like some things were being pulled by like biology and just
Yeah.
like just survival and then other things being pulled by spirit? Or do you think like everything would be is like being
Yeah.
pulled by like spirit and like other things are being pulled by
No,
like the
no, I think it's all
biological
those
mechanism of
things.
survival?
No, that's actually a
All
really
those
cool
things.
idea. No, I think it's all those things. It's our, whatever my sort of I'm kind of wired to do in a particular moment, or my, my like an impulse that comes from my body, or that comes from something that happens around me, or yeah, it's really it's so fascinating. Yeah.
Wow, so it's just like a whole almost like this isn't the same thing, but like the biopsychosocial model, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
all those
Exactly.
things
And I think I have a
like
feeling that's what
pulling.
this guy Sapolsky, he's a neuroscientist, and absolutely have a feeling that's exactly what he's saying. Uh, I mean, he's saying it with much greater depth and intellect than I would ever say. I mean, incredible. The guy, he's supposed to be quite a brilliant thinker. So,
Okay,
like,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So I will defer to. Hey, listen, I hang on. I have to send a message to Lori.
Mm.
Wait, Lori's in Pond, right?
I'm not sure if she's still here or not, but she might be.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Well, I'm waiting to see when I'm going to
I
pick her up.
can.
All right, man. Okay. Wait,
Okay.
Eric Sell. So inequality in genetics. Okay. So here, let me just say how this operates, right? I'm gonna summarize what I really didn't get to. So the idea being that some inequality is built into just decisions people make, and in those decisions that collective groups of people make that creates their culture, right? And some of it is just larger structural issues that move groups of people along, right? So it's I mean, anything at all, right? So and in the kinds of things I've been talking about would be like public policies and discrimination or opportunities or any of those kinds of things, right? The how good are the education systems? What kind of industry exists in your communities? And I just read about this community where here in this state where a big manufacturing plant is pulling out. It's going to absolutely devastate the community. So inequality, right? That's nobody's fault. It's pulling out. So, and then the DNA piece, because people can't not look at groups of people who look alike and say like those people behave in that way because they're wired that way. Because look, they all look the same. So there must be something about them that leads them to do what they do in certain ways, right? Or to make less money or to not do as well in school or whatever it is. There must be something that creates that inequality or that makes that group perform better. I don't know, right? There must be something in their bodies, this DNA admixture that makes them unique from that other group. And what I was trying to show yesterday is like, well, no, that's not the case because in all these ways, these bodies don't really mean anything, and they have they have very little. There are only a few tiny ways in which these bodies matter for unequal circumstances that we see. So one is like running. The Laotians aren't going to run long distance races, right? Because they're not. Their bodies can't do that. But
Right.
but their minds can. It's not about their minds because our minds are fundamentally the same. They're not different among human beings all over the world. The consciousness, the spirit, and any degree to which we see differences, it's cultural. It's individual group cultural differences, or it's
Mm.
just structural factors. It's not genetic.
Right.
So that's the
Right.
genetics and inequality, man, that I see. There's no
Yeah.
sociological basis for a genetics of inequality. Yeah. Yeah.
What a statement. There's no sociological basis for genetics of
I haven't seen
inequality.
it. I'm open to
Yeah.
it. I actually
No,
look for it. I mean, a lot of people who are in my shoes would never even to say that. Even means that at some level you entertained it, even enough to say it. And you would never want to say that. So you just don't even entertain it
right.
at all. And I'm looking for an answer, but I don't see it.
Right. No, for me, I was just trying to process that. I was
Yeah,
just
no, I got you. I got you. Yeah.
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 It's just wild to me that even though it's the reality, people do think like that, which is
Well, no, but why wouldn't you
what.
think like that, right? Like, look, if you don't think about the complications of the other two things, right? Personal or
Mhm.
group decisions, right? And structural factors and forces outside of our control. Think of the layers of complication and understanding those things. I spent like, 2.5 days on it, but 2.5 days is nothing, man. Like, I spent 40 years studying that, and I'm just now understanding what it means. And I spent 40 years. I study it every single day. That's what I study. So, mind you, imagine you never studied that, and all I see are these groups of people who look alike. And I think, look, well, because they look alike, their DNA must be similar, like through and through. And so, therefore, my God, that
Wow.
must be the part of the cause of all their behavior, these behavioral differences that I see in these groups of people. Like, why wouldn't you think
Yeah.
that? Right.
Right.
And it's only
Right.
because I studied 40 years the sociology of it that I can say, yeah, I don't see after 40 years, I don't see any evidence of it at all. I really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. When would that just be common knowledge that's not like that's like a natural
There's
inclination,
nothing,
the
man.
natural
There's nothing.
thought.
There's nothing. No,
Never.
isn't it
Yeah.
nothing? Because you can't spend 40 years. Just like this guy, Robert
There's
Sapolsky, right? He's a neuroscientist. He spent 40 years studying, 45 years studying neuroscience. I can never make that up. I'll never be anything near. I'll never understand the world anywhere close to how he understands it, ever. I don't
right.
have that. I can't do it. I can read 20 books. I'm not even close. So
Right.
you just can't. There's nothing you can say. I don't really try to say anything. I just do 3 classes and I try to open a window for people and be like, all right, here's
Yeah.
what. So
Because people are like those attributions. I remember studying in psychology, there's like internal attributions and external attributions,
yeah, yeah,
right? Like, and then people those attributions are internal, right? You're like, oh, you're looking at this group, you're making an assumption, you're like, oh, it must be something within them that makes them this. But it's like,
yeah,
when are people making distinctions between like what's an external attribution, like maybe the structure
yeah, yeah,
or environment that they're within, that
yeah.
you know, and because yeah, it's
You,
just
you, you just it's a very difficult thing to do if you're not thinking about it all the time. You have to be like very smoothly moving back and forth. That's why sometimes in my
right.
class I can lose people because in my mind I'm very like I'm moving back and forth between the individual unit of analysis and the group unit of analysis. But other
Wow.
people aren't necessarily, they're not following me, and I might be going a little too fast or be getting confused even in my own mind, and so I can't keep people. All right, listen though, uh, I have to go pick up Lori
Okay.
where you are actually. So when we finish,
Yep.
you can go tell Lori I'm on my way.
All right,
Uh,
bet I will.
all right, so
Yeah.
listen. Yeah,
Maybe I'll see you.
be ready. All right, so listen, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm
I'll
gonna
tell her, get ready, Laura. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna cut out. Hang on, Baldiers. Are we projecting our prejudices on others because of private opinions based in fear? No, I think it's. I think once in a while it's that. I think sometimes it's just not really knowing, not having the experience and not knowing. Like if I hadn't had my 40 years of this, I would. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. Oh man, I don't know where I'd be. Okay, listen, I gotta go. Opinionated bad, thanks. I can't get Lori mad. Thanks, Mikhail. All right, I'm out. All right, see y'all.